Hello and welcome to FS Podcasts. We're a student initiative at Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, which resides in Frankfurt, Germany. And what we do is we speak on various diverse topics and we bring experts to give their insights and experiences. My name is Anwar Sawyer.
And I'm George.
And I'm Nils.
And today we have a special guest here. We have the current president of Frankfurt School, former strategy professor here at Frankfurt School also. We'd like to welcome Dr. Stieglitz.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I look forward to the talk.
Today, for our viewers, we're going to talk about the future of Frankfurt School and its positioning with business schools. And our first question for you. We see where we're greatly positioned now as one of the fastest growing business schools in Europe in both the Master of Finance and the Master of Management. Well, what's your vision for Frankfurt School?
I think my vision for Frankfurt School is very clear, right? And I think it's really represented by the brand claim that we're making. German excellence, global global relevance. I think this is my vision for the Frankfurt School, and I think we need to do three things. If I think about the Frankfurt School, first of all, I think we have to really celebrate science. I think this is something that is very important. I mean, this is why we are bringing in a lot of young faculty that are very active on the research front. Second, I think we have to become and continue to be client-centric. That is, we really have to listen to our customers, both within the school, our students, but also to employers. And the third one is that we need to have impact, right? We have to shape the business landscape through our programs, through our executive education, through our advisory services.
Yes, that sounds amazing. And in this new position, how do you actually feel? I mean, coming from being a professor here at Frankfurt School and now being the president.
It's a major career shift, right? I mean, these two jobs do have something in common, but not too much, right? And so far, I mean, I'm very much in the honeymoon period, right? It's a lot of excitement. Everything is new. Everything is beautiful. Yeah. So ask me about this question in a year, right? But so far, I'm really enjoying the ride.
So we're ready setting up another episode with...
Absolutely. Look forward.
One first year report, right?
Yes, exactly.
Should we expect something different from now on?
I don't know. I think this would be a good question to ask in a year, right? I think I was the internal candidate, so I stand for a commitment to the strategy that we had during the last 5 years. I mean, this is a strategy that brought me to the Frankfurt School. It's a strategy that I strongly believe in, and I think it's also a strategy that we're going to need moving forward. So I think there are going to be no big changes, right? That the world is not going to change in April. But I think you're going to notice more subtle changes as we move along. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. And just right now, you're sitting with two international students who are very who came to Frankfurt School. I can speak for myself. I'll let George speak. Yeah. For its opportunity with its international impact and its strategy as an international school. In terms of diversity and Frankfurt School positioning, how do you expect? How do you want to strategically position us internationally and also with diversity?
Well, I think those are two questions.
Yeah,
I think one question is on the international part, and the second question is on the diversity part. Right? Let's first talk a little bit about the international part. And I think if we start to look into our programs, I think it's very clear that we were very successful getting international students into our master programs and in our MBA programs. Right? I think the ratio there is more than 50%, and I think that's a very healthy level. When we look into the bachelor, it's much lower, and this has also something to do with German regulations. Yes. It's much more difficult to admit international students to the bachelor program here. Okay. And that's one of the things that we will have to work on, right? And I would also like to internationalize our bachelor program. So, and I think one of these bottlenecks that we still have to work on is really career services, right? As you guys know, I mean, one of the problems that we are facing in the German economy is that many companies require that people are fluent in German, right? And I think this is something that we need to accept on one level. But second, I think we have to start to work with employers more closely to, first of all, identify German companies that do not require this. And second, also to broaden our perspective, right? That we, in the career services, we see Europe or the globe as our labor market. So those are some of the tangible things that we need to do. When it comes to diversity, I think this is something that we have to work on, continue to work on. I think it's very clear that we are not a German institution anymore. We are a bilingual institution. And this is one of the things that I'm going to, support very strongly. And I think, business schools have to celebrate diversity. Right? So this is something that we, I think, have to do more on. Because as you guys know, I mean, diversity has come under a lot of pressure. Right? I mean, these so-called globalist values, right, is not something that some people, at least, believe in. And I think business schools are there to celebrate and promote these globalist values. And Frankfurt School has to be part of such a movement.
How does Frankfurt School plan to celebrate it?
How do we plan to celebrate it? I think there are many little things that we can that we need to do. Right? I think, for example, I mean, being strictly bilingual is one thing that we have already put in place. I think, I mean, increasing diversity also in our intakes, that we actually also, I mean, evaluate our student intake on that, I think is another part. And then I think it's very important that all of us, right, students, faculty, staff, everybody who is Frankfurt School actually lives by these values, right? That we are tolerant, that we accept differences, that we cherish diversity and do not see this as a threat, right? I think this is something that we as people have to do and not necessarily something that we can closely control or monitor, right? I think diversity has to become a way of life and not something that we manage. Right? It's the appropriate thing to do.
I agree with you. I mean, I hope that Frankfurt School is going to find the best way to celebrate diversity and also to increase the level.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
But I think would be a lot of times I feel that sometimes when we speak about being bilingual and they may see it as a threat to the German language because in some ways, but I think we need to see that we can still be diverse while still respecting the traditions of Germany, and they're not threats to each other.
I fully agree, right? I fully agree. I mean, by becoming bilingual, it does not mean that we cease to be a German institution. Right? I think it's simply a way for us to open up to the world, right? And I think if we, for example, strictly insist on the German language for a lot of our communication, I think we are essentially, I mean, saying no to talent.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in Denmark prior to joining Frankfurt School, and I think one of the big advantages that Denmark has is that it's very easy for them to attract international talent because, I mean, everybody speaks English. I mean, it's a corporate language in many companies is English, so it becomes much easier to integrate talent from throughout the world. Right? And I think that's a good role model.
And tackling those points, where do you see Frankfurt School in 10 or in 20 years?
I'm not thinking about 20 years, right? The future is very hard to predict. So I don't know, I mean, where we are going to be in 20 years. But I'm very much thinking about the next 10 years, right? And I think in 10 years, I would like Frankfurt School to be truly one of the top 5 institutions in Europe.
In Europe?
In Europe. Okay. That is my long-term goal, and this is what I'm going to work for from day one. right? Because I think if you really have the ambition, you have to have a long-term perspective, and you also need the patience in order to pursue the goal, right? You don't build an excellent institution overnight, right?
No.
So this is going to be my primary ambition.
And maybe this is too soon to answer this question, but are we very far from that, from being one of the top 5 schools in Europe?
I think it depends on how you look at it, right?
Yeah.
I think if you look at, for example, the Financial Times ranking, right?
Yes.
There's still some way to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think this is going to be is going to take some time. I think going from position 50 down to 25, that's comparatively easy, right?
Yes.
But getting from 25 to 5, right? That's much more difficult. So if I think about these rankings, I think this is going to be a little bit more difficult. If I look at, employability rankings, and those are the ones that really count for me, right? This is, I think, where we are looking actually fairly close to becoming a top 1 institution in Germany, right? And I think that already goes a long way towards becoming top 5 in Europe, right? Yes. And I think if we continue to work on the challenges that we have, if we face the problems and talk about the problems that the institution has and try to solve this, then I think we can truly become a top European institution. Right?
As a students, we're very happy to hear that, right?
No, we are. We are. Because, and I think especially in terms of coming from someone who's formerly a teacher, faculty member, so you have close relationship to what the problems that we as students face. So you would know some of those problems. Coming from that angle as a teacher, what are some of the ideas that you would implement from as now the president?
So when it comes to our degree programs?
Our degree programs especially.
I think I mentioned this at the beginning. I think the client centricity point, right? Yes. I think when it comes to our curriculum, we have to think about, okay, what do employers actually expect from us? What kind of skills, what kind of knowledge do we give to our students in order to excel in their career, right? And I think this is one of the things that we have to continue to work on, right? Because that is a constant challenge to make sure that the stuff that we are teaching is still relevant, right? I think second, and this is something that we have improved a lot during the last couple of years. This was actually one of my big surprises, right? So when I knew that I'm going to step into this role, I started to talk to a lot of employers, right? In order to understand, okay, what do you actually expect? How do you see the Frankfurt School? What do you expect from our students? And I was thinking about, okay, they are going to say all these nifty theories that I'm interested in. What I found surprising is that they put a lot of emphasis also on the soft skills, right? How people behave, how they communicate, how they present themselves, how they solve conflicts and things like that. And I think this is something that we still have to think about carefully, how to actually put this into our programs. Yeah. We have made progress there. Mm-hmm. I think we have made progress on many, many fronts. But it's very clear that there's still potential, right? And that's, I think, something that we have to continuously work on.
And I think that's very interesting because a lot, I think, when we look at, you mentioned employability and direct relations from us being once students to now becoming employees. What about the other side of the coin? What about from us being students to now becoming business owners or entrepreneurs? Mm-hmm. Do you have what kind of views do you have in that light?
So how we should promote startups? Is that the question?
Not necessarily startups, but if a student from Frankfurt School decides to open his own business, being a startup or being a small business or family business.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the striking things, right? Because if I look back to my own, when I was a student, right? Our goal was to become an investment banker or a McKinsey consultant, to essentially have a corporate career, right? starting up your own business was hardly ever mentioned. And I think this has, fundamentally changed during the last couple of years, right? That people are truly interested in their own company as one of the career moves. And I think this is something that we need to support, and I think we have started to support this, right? I think we now have on faculty 2 professors that are teaching entrepreneurship, that are teaching how to start up your company, right? We have also, when it comes to finance, I think we have dedicated courses, how to finance startups, what are the specialties there. I think also what we have done is to continue to connect the school with the startup scene here in Frankfurt and the Rhine-Main region. Yes. And I think this is something that we still have to build on. I think it's on a good level. But this is still something where we have to carefully think about how to navigate all this, also for the students, right? Because we have all kinds of activities. We have the startup nights. We have connections to the companies. We have courses. We have not put this into an integrated type of approach or program, right? And that's one of the things that we need to work on. Right?
Yes. We're looking forward to that.
Yes,
definitely. Definitely. Part of my goal. I guess I'm just asking that selfishly.
Yeah. I think what is important, I think one of the things, stepping into this role that becomes very clear to you very soon is that even if you have many changes in your mind, they're not going to happen overnight. Right? So I'm also asking you for some patience, right? I think we are going to start, I'm going to start to try to implement my agenda from the get-go. But these things are going to take time. And some of the things are going to take time longer than some of us would hope for, right? So for example, what I mentioned earlier, celebrating diversity, that's a long-term project. Yeah. Right? That is a long-term project. Definitely. Reorganizing how we think about or how do we deliver startup knowledge or running your own business, can happen much sooner. And I think this is also very important. I think I need feedback from people, right? I think that is something that is very important to really understand what do people expect, what do they want, right? And who wants what and why. Right? Because that is, I think, quite critical. So very happy to come back in a year to talk about all these ideas that we just discussed.
Let's do it.
No, we're very happy about that. Yeah, we're very happy. So we'd like to now dive into what your past profession or your past role at Frankfurt School, which was as a professor of strategy. I think you ran the strategy department here at the Master of Management. In that role, what led you to pursue strategy?
Oh, why strategy? Oh, that's a very long story. Oh, that's a massively long story. So I'm going to cut it short, right? I think I was already when I was a kid or a teenager, I was always interested in strategy. I think it's a fascinating term. Yes. I was always into strategy games, and I was always into history, right? And I thought that becoming a professor of strategy is a good combination of these things, right? So this is the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer is that the big fundamental research question that I always hear was, why doesn't competition in markets don't die out, right? Think about this, right? The current political discussion is about, Facebook, Alphabet, Apple, and so on, dominating the internet markets, yes. Right? And the political discussion essentially says, oh, we got to regulate all these companies because otherwise they're becoming too dominant. Yes. Now, we had these discussions before, right? If you go back in time 20 years ago when I was a student, that was exactly the discussion that politicians had about Microsoft. Right? Microsoft is so dominant, they're going to become a monopoly. And the second big company that's becoming a monopoly is Nokia. Yeah. Right? Here we are in 2018. Nokia, they're not gone, they're still around, but they're not as dominant as before. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft, right? They're not dominating anymore. Right? So the question for me was always, why does it happen? Right? And I think strategy as a topic deals with why are some companies successful and others are not, right? And this is why I picked strategy, in order to answer this big philosophical question.
Did you manage to answer this question for yourself?
Well, I have the contours, right? I have the contours of an answer, right? And I think the contour of an answer is that success very often provide the ground for future failure, right? Success tends to make you risk averse. Success tends to make you very large, right? So less adaptable. So as soon as the next big thing comes, the next disruption, you have really big problems adapting to it, right? And I think that is at least the contours of an answer. Obviously, I could spend hours now fleshing this out, but I don't want to bore you.
No, it's very interesting.
Are you still going to give lectures here and there?
Yes, I mean, I'm still thinking about how to do this because it's very clear. I mean, one of the big lessons learned in this job is that you don't have a lot of time, right? Yes. So I just finished teaching my core strategy course that is dear to my heart, that I've been teaching for the last 10 years. So that was pretty difficult to give this up.
Yeah.
So I'm still debating with myself whether I still want to deliver an entire course or two, or whether I would like to selectively go into certain courses and simply teach a case or a certain topic. I have not made up my mind yet, right? But what is definitely important for me, I always love teaching. I always found this very rewarding. So this is something that I don't want to give up, right? And second, I think it's also important to be close to the customer, right? To understand who our students are, how they think, what they expect, whether they're happy with what we're doing, and things like that, right? So I'm definitely going to continue teaching. In what format and how much, I still have to decide.
Just that's very nice. But just a short question from our fellow students from MIM.
Yes.
What is the thing between you and Danish companies in case studies?
Well, since I spent a lot of time in Denmark, right, and I still like the country a lot, right? And I also, I mean, I have worked with some Danish companies, right? That's kind of like the other connection, right?
Okay. There's something specific that I say, well, you gotta ask me about it. All right.
So that transition from, you said you also worked with Danish companies, but at the same time, did you directly, after your studies, were you directly a professor?
More or less, right? So I spent 4 months as an executive assistant to a CEO or a managing director to a managing director. But that was, truth be told, right, the only real practical experience that I ever had, right? Because before deciding to pursue a PhD, I actually wanted to be a journalist, a TV journalist, right? That was actually my career choice, and I worked a couple of years very hard on becoming a journalist. But then I decided that this academic stuff, academic research is a lot of fun, right? That I also want to, be a student a little bit longer, right? This is why I did my PhD. And then I decided to go into academia, right? Yes. So my practical experience is quite limited. Yes. But I think, on the other hand, I've been teaching a lot of this stuff. I've been thinking a lot about this stuff for quite some time. I was also the head of the management department. So I do feel very comfortable moving into this position.
Yes. And you mentioned your past career or your past goal to become a journalist. Yes. Are there any articles that we should be looking for that you have out there?
Well, it was I wanted to become a TV journalist. A TV journalist. So I still have some documentaries that I did on videotapes.
Are they out?
Right? So if you're interested, but that is a long time ago, right? A long time ago.
Okay. You probably are age. That's very interesting.
Very kind.
Okay. So moving more into a personal manner of your life as a student. What kind of student were you?
What kind of students I was?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I think I was back then. I was a very political student, right? So I was heavily into politics, also, I mean, university politics. I was I working very hard? I think so. I was reading a lot, right? I was reading a lot because, I mean, especially after like this first 2-3 semesters, I truly became interested in all these topics, right? So I read a lot. I mean, I was talking about, I mean, these are the topics about our lectures, I mean, on a daily basis with my fellow students. So I was really, really heavily into this stuff, right? So in that way, I was a pretty good student. On the other hand, when it came to attending lectures, right, I always remember the first week I was trying to attend each and every lecture. Yes. And that heavily decreased then. And I remember, I mean, what was that? I mean, what was the topic? What is it called? Public finance. So I studied economics. So I also, and we had different tracks in there with different subject areas. And in the subject area, public finance, I thought it was interesting, but I never attended a single lecture. So because there was a book by the professor, and I read the book, and I read all kinds of other articles, so I got full marks there without ever having to attend a lecture. Yes. Which tells you something, right? It tells you that lectures, or this classical way of a person standing, in front of a crowd and talking for 1.5 hours, and essentially repeating stuff that you can also read up in a textbook, is probably a thing of the past, and it should be, right? So I think for us as faculty, what we have to think about very carefully is what is the added value of actually having these people in front of us, right? That we actually can talk to them, that we can actually interact with them, right? I mean, just simply reading off a book, right, or reading off your slides, I don't think that's appropriate anymore.
We had it's funny that we had a talk similar to this, but more on the end of student value based upon grades versus student value based upon their whole package, so to speak, and how that caters into the careers. For the viewers that don't know, maybe international, some German companies request that you show your grades.
Yes.
As a way to value what kind of candidate you may be.
Yes. I mean, the grades are an important first-order selection criteria, right? It essentially provides a cutoff. If you don't have a certain grade, right, then they're not going to look at you. Yes. But after that, I mean, grades don't matter anymore, right? So I'm sometimes a little bit surprised, I mean, how much emphasis students put on the grades. They are important. There's no question about that, right? But to be honest, it doesn't really matter whether you have, I don't know, 88 or 90 points, right? I think that is less important, right? And I truly also believe that the stuff that we teach is very important, is very relevant, right? So I think I would love to see a little bit more emphasis on not just learning for a grade or learning for an exam, but learning because the stuff might become truly important, right? So one of the important experiences of my own was, I mean, when I was a university student, I picked a course called Law and Economics. And it's essentially the economic analysis of contracts, of laws, and things like that. And it was a purely theoretical course, and I took it out of, I mean, essentially a curiosity. Right? I wanted to understand how one can apply microeconomics to law, right? And I don't think very highly of law as an academic field. So I thought, oh wow, this is a nice scientific. I don't hope that there are no lawyers. So this was, I mean, pure intellectual pleasure. Now, I told you I had this 4 months working as an executive assistant. Yes. So what was the most valuable course that I ever had for that position? That was exactly law and economics. Why? Because one of the most important things that I had to do was running into negotiations, right? Keeping track of them, and then running back to our lawyers to set up contracts. And all that I had to think about was, okay, what are the different risks? How can we distribute them among the different contracting parties, and on and on and on, right? So the stuff that I thought was completely theoretical was super important, And I think this is, I think this is also important for our students, right? One should not ask why this is relevant, because very often you do not understand what is going to become relevant 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 years down the road. You simply don't know.
At the end of every episode of FS Podcast, we ask 3 questions for interviewers. However, until getting there, we still have like more 1 or 2 questions. And one is related to the campus. What is your favorite thing about new campus?
My favorite, the cafeteria.
The cafeteria?
Yes.
Is there a reason? Or?
I think because I think in the old campus we lacked a meeting place, where people more or less spontaneously met. Right? Nowadays you can go down to the cafeteria and you're going to meet somebody that you know, right? And obviously I think also the lecture halls, the classrooms that we know, right? They are much higher quality than we had before.
We're sitting in one right now as we speak.
Exactly, right? And I think I'm very happy of how they turned out.
Yeah, I didn't know I've been there once in the old campus, but not as a student. And being here is different, I would say.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like inside a company than actually an university campus, and it fosters a lot of things, just like sitting down and talking about initiatives or even about grades. But the environment where we are actually helps us to just think out of the box sometimes. Just not that we are in university, but we are actually engaging in projects, engaging in initiatives, or even studying, but not just a way of studying like in library, even in library I would say.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think we now have a true campus where most of the student life is actually happening. Right? And I think that is something that is very different to what we had before. And this is something also moving forward that we have to work on to provide exactly that experience. Right? That people like to spend time on campus, even if they don't have any lectures.
That's true.
That's what we have to work on.
That's true. That's true. Well, I lived in dorms, so I'm neighbor.
Yes, And let's try to expand these doors. Right?
Okay, so we can get right into the 3 questions
Yes,
that we
please.
ask every guest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who do you who do you look up to? Who inspires you the most?
Should that be a living person or
No,
That's how it can be
anyone,
even Aristotle.
That's a good question. I have many people that I look up to. Right? I think it's Steve Jobs is obviously a person that I admire a lot. Right? Even though I always in my lectures I always tell people, well, maybe he was just lucky, but I think he was truly a visionary. Right? So Steve Jobs would be one of the people.
Okay. Another question that we always ask: what's your favorite book?
Yeah.
Anarchy, State, and Utopia.
And is that a book that you recommend people?
It's a philosophy book.
Okay. Because self-development and also students, they always read books that are recommended by professors, not only to listen better to lectures, but also to drive them in a better way in their career or whatever the moment they are in their life. So that would be a book that would you recommend to help you when you're
no, I think it's not a book that is going to help you, right, for your career, right?
Okay.
I think if it comes to your career, right, if there's one book on strategy that I would like to read, right, so a little bit closer to home, that would be Richard Rumel's book on Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. So if there's only one book that you want to read on strategy, that should be the one.
Okay, and our last question. If you find yourself right now in the airport having a golden ticket, where would you go and why?
I'm actually where I want to be. And I mean this seriously. I'm very serious about this, right? At the moment, I'm very happy where I am.
Okay. In FS Podcast, this is a segment of FS Podcast where we usually like to highlight student achievement. But in this episode, we would, on behalf of all of FS Podcast and its members, like to thank you, but also the former president, Udo Stieglitz, for all that he's contributed to the growth and the development development of Frankfurt School. So we appreciate him, and with the hashtag Danke Udo. Danke Udo.
I fully agree, right? I think, look at this building, right? I think this is something, that he pushed through, right? And I think he has been, a very, very important, very influential for the whole development. And why, the four of us are actually here, right? Without him, we would not have met, right? And I think that's an important thing.
And we'd like to wish you the best on your campaign as the president. Not campaign. I'm not
That's past.
But no, it's your 10 years president, and we look forward to in a year's time to be able to sit with you again about all of the success that's come through your strategy and your goals.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for inviting me, and please take me up on my offer. Right? Thank you. That was
all right.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you very much.